Concentrated on the beat.
Buy this beat now. You know you like it.
Alright, so everybody take a seat. Let's talk about this for a second. Now, those of you who are familiar and those of you who are not, allow me to inform you for those who are not. So those of you who are not informed about Knockout City, you probably heard about it a few times, probably heard about it or seen it in passing on YouTube's guide, in YouTube's search history or whatever have you. It was aesthetically a dodgeball game, but with extreme measures to the extent of cartoonish characters, colorful backgrounds. Really, aesthetically, it was, I would say, a 7.5 out of 10, because there was always a way to do things when it came to Knockout City. And for most people that try to say Knockout City was trash, Knockout City was this, Knockout City was that, this is not what we're gonna do. What I'm going to do is explain to you guys, because we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Knockout City's shutdown, really. Now, again, for those of you who are not aware, you can also still play Knockout City via the Knockout City Discord, although you cannot play the game physically anymore. But you can play it through PC. So, allow me to explain this. Knockout City, the official reason is that Knockout City was deemed unprofitable to some. But the official statement that came from its Twitter page said that its studio was not large enough to continue maintenance, therefore making Knockout City's upcoming maintenance effectively much harder than it needed to be. But that's not what we're doing here. What this is essentially is, where does Knockout City remain and why it was shut down? So the studio claimed that it was because the studio had consistent issues with its bugs, and many issues came from the overall fan service was pretty decent during the closed, then the open beta, then its official release. Then when Knockout City came free to play, most people were practically pleased with it. I mean, in-game transactions, it wasn't that bad. But the point of the video here is not to explain Knockout City. It's going to be why Knockout City was shut down. So there was, and this is the consistent rumor that was in the pipeline, Knockout City was originally going to be a much larger scale project, but apparently when the studio was approached by their higher ups and said, well, we can't profit from this, because the thing about it is, they didn't believe that Knockout City would make it past a 5-year mark. They didn't believe Knockout City would be profitable past a 5-year mark. Now, obviously, for those of you who know what that means, that statement is simply this: if a large studio does not feel like a game is capable of surpassing the projected sales numbers, they'll pull the plug, effectively. And again, there's been many games like Knockout City that didn't hit a 5-year mark. There's many games that have. You know, we have games that have reached their 10-year mark, like Grand Theft Auto 5, for example, and we now have Grand Theft Auto 6 on the way. So effectively, 2 years into Grand Theft Auto 6 being out, they'll probably stop doing any updates for, you know, excuse me, they'll probably stop doing updates for 5. And just like with Dying Light 2, Dying Light 2 is getting consistent updates, and if you look at the time frame between the first Dying Light and the second Dying Light is like a 6-year gap. So they made long-term plans to keep, you know, players well connected with the game, as well as consistently give them updates, consistently this, consistent that. But many fans complained that Knockout City wasn't giving the amount of updates that they promised. There was a lot of bugging issues, there was a lot of competitive play issues, and then obviously being stricken with losing a 2 million player base within 2 weeks, which again, that's heartbreaking enough. Within 2 weeks you see your game effectively lose a large chunk of its player base, and then not figure out what the the reasoning behind it. So effectively, what some people say, Knockout City was canceled because of the studio not being, not having a big enough studio for it. I'm willing to believe that. Don't get me wrong, I'm willing to believe that. But with the same breath in my body, I'm also saying, like, they didn't pull the plug on Knockout City so abruptly, because if they did, then they would have never had this issue by sitting there saying the game is not playable or the game is not where we want it to be at, and Knockout City just was not effectively at that level. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved playing Knockout City. I played Knockout City with my son. I played Knockout City with my son and my nephew on several occasions, and we had a very good time playing, Knockout City. I never really had a bad experience. I mean, if we're talking about how the lobby would take forever, you know what I'm saying? The lobbying was, like I said, because back to the low player base, that effectively hurt the game itself. And when people don't have any real issue, who want to wait, who don't have a problem with waiting like 5 minutes or something like that, but effectively that's bad for business when you really think like a game that's supposed to be multiplayer is taking 5 minutes to load a lobby. So again, what the real reason of Knockout City being canceled? Knockout City was really canceled because of the studio's inability to keep up with the demand that required Knockout City to stay what it was. And because they couldn't do that, it made the situation much worse. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Knockout City should be given to another studio and brought back? Let me know what you guys think in the comments.